Sorry, time. Shall I start? Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Tarun Chauhan. Today I'm going to take your session related to research methodology for management decision, that is MMPC 015. So let's begin from the first slide. What is research? Basically, if we say in journal, research can be defined as a process to gain some new knowledge, new fact, or new information. In other words, we can also denote as a search for a new knowledge or as a systematic investigation to establish any new facts, any new information, or any new a particular researcher can include a new findings related to a relevant results based on the estimated data from the online sources or collected from the original sources. Let's talk about the characteristics of the research. There are four main characteristics of research. The first one is systematic and logical. It means that research should follow all above steps in procedure, which is based on the logic or some theme or any subject area. If a particular student has to choose a finance area, for example, health insurance, or you can say the funds management or mutual funds finance, that means whatever the steps and procedures to begin a research on the mutual fund finance, or we can say the health insurance sector, then he has the research should be follow the specific steps and procedures, or you can see the steps in the research process. That means the research should be systematic and logical. And the next is empirical. Empirical, it refers the particular research should be based on real life experience. It should be the whole universe, it should be the living organisms, or we can say a real social life experiences or the issues where the research is to be conducted, and accordingly a particular researcher do the research on the real life issues, and accordingly the researchers goes on particular research. Then the next one is reliability. Reliability refers the researcher should be expected to generate the same results repeatedly, making it consistent. It means the research should portray the same results so that in each and every year, so that the results should be consistently working on each and every year. Next one is replicable. Replicable means the same research should give the same results, so that if either it would be done by the particular individual or as a community or by anyone else. So replicable, it's only refers the whatever the same research should portray the same results, whether it is done by anyone else or whether it would be done by any community or organization. So if the same research portray the same results every year, that means it is replicable. The next concept which is belong to the course, that is the research methodology. Research methodology is a specific steps or procedures or the techniques which are very used to identify, select, process and analysis the information about the subject area or about a new topic. For example, if we talk about a particular study to assess the awareness level regarding the health insurance schemes, that means a research methodology is to be adopted where the specific process, the selection of the samples, identification of the data collection, whatever the methods and instruments to be used to collect the data from the various people, that's called the research methodology. In a particular research paper, the mainly this concept is used to overall evaluate the study critically, the reliability and the validity, and it also allows the reader to evaluate the exact study overall, so that a particular readers can able to understand whether the study is accurate or not. Let's talk about the components of the research methodology. The first one is research design. Of course, this particular component is selected based on the research questions and the data required. Now, we talk about the research questions. Research questions are those questions where a researcher is willing to research on. Like, for example, what are the various health insurance schemes in India? So this is a particular research question, and accordingly we have to collect the data, whatever the data is required related to the health insurance scheme, that to be considered. So the whatever the designs that we used in our research or a researcher is willing to take up, that is the experimental research, which are based on the experiments. For example, diagnostic test, laboratory test. So to get to know a person, to test whether a person is suffered from cancer or not, then experimental research is to be conducted in the form of laboratory test or the, you can say, diagnostic test. Let's talk about the quasi experimental research. It is based on the specific selections of the individuals where we can hope or see the cause and effect relationships. Let's talk about the correlational research. Correlational research refers to those research which portray the relation between or a correlation between two or more factors or variables. Now the question arises is that we are estimating the correlation between two factors or variables. So what is the variables? Variables can be anything. It could be any object, it could be any idea, or it could be anything else which have some value that a particular researcher is willing to measure. That's called variables. It could be height, it could be age, it could be weight, it could be birth rate, it could be anything else which has some value and that can a researcher can easily measure. So correlational research are those research where the correlation between the two variables can be measured. Let's talk about the next one is descriptive research, where it is that research or it is a process where a particular researcher is willing to describe a particular you can say theme, a particular fact in a very you can say comprehensive way. That's called a descriptive research. Exploratory research are those research where a particular researcher are very unknown to a particular problem and he or she is willing to research on that particular problem to explore that particular issue to the readers, and that research is called exploratory research. The next component is research method, that which method is to be used in our research. If a particular researcher is willing to do a study on any particular topic, then he has to choose which method is to be used in or his or her research. That could be the following three categories, that is a quantitative research, qualitative research, and mixed method research. So what is the quantitative research? Quantitative research are those research where a particular value is to be or the data or information is measured numerically, where the particular researcher is seeking to answer when and where. That's called a quantitative research. Qualitative research are those research where the particular information or you can say cannot be measured numerically. It is a very subjective phenomena where a particular you can see a particular as particular assessment has to be done whether a particular individual is to assess you can say subjectively, we can say is to assess the facts or response accordingly. Let's talk about the mixed method research. It's a combination of the quantitative and qualitative research. So where a particular researcher can use either quantitative or qualitative or both. So these are the research method where the quantitative is measured numerically. It is a very objective in nature. Qualitative is a very subjective in nature where a particular researcher has to portray his responses, has to portray his feelings, has to portray his friendships towards the various factors, or we can see a mixed approach where a particular researcher can adopt both quantitative as well as the qualitative. The next one is reasons for selecting a specific methodology. It explains why you have to a particular researcher has to answer in his research report or a particular article where you have to portray that what is the exact research, what is the exact problem in in his or her research related to a particular subject area. If we talk about the finance, then I have to find out, or we have to find out a particular problems in that particular subject area. If we talk about the health insurance schemes or a poor awareness level, this is the problem. Then how it would be the poor awareness level in that particular reason regarding the government health insurance scheme. So that reasons have to portray in his her research. Next one is research instruments. Research instruments are those instruments where we used for collecting a data. For example, interviews, surveys, observations, case studies, and many more instruments where the particular researcher can use in or her research. So, in other words, we can say a data collection methods. So the research instruments, in other words, we can also say that it refers to a data collection method, so that a particular researcher use such methods to collect the data from the individuals, from the people, from a particular community or an organization in the form of interviews, surveys, or based on the observation or a case studies relevant to the various organizations or communities. So a particular researcher has to adopt a one or two instrument and along with the reasons. So that is very important to portray all these four particular components in your research paper. The next one is sampling. Sampling, we can say it is a process of selecting the subset of the population being studied by a researcher. So it is just a selection of the samples that of the samples collected from the people, and that particular sample, that particular information or data will be included or will be evaluated or investigated in his or her research study, and that's called sampling. Next one is data collection. So whatever the data has to be gathered or has to be collected using the various using the various data collection methods such as surveys, interviews, observations, and many more. You can say focus interviews, etc. Next one is data analysis. Once the data has been collected, then the data has to be coded, then is to be analyzed, so that accordingly the results, whatever the results has been obtained after analyzing the data, can be easily interpreted in a research study. The next one is every research has a positive aspect and a negative aspect. Positive, we are already, you can say, including in a particular research study, but along with that, the limitations of the study has to be included into a research paper or into a research, you can say, article. So a particular researcher has to mention whatever the limitations, whatever the shortcomings in his research, he or she has to mention in his research study. The next one is validity and reliability. It is one of the most important factor of a research process or of a research paper, that is validity and reliability. Validity, it always helps the researcher to identify the accuracy and the truthfulness of the findings. So whatever the findings, whatever the conclusions has been, you can say, investigated from his or her research study, that's called validity. So whatever the accuracy and truthfulness has come into the conclusion, something unique findings, something unique interpretation, if anything that shows something truth to the audience, that shows something truth to the readers, it's called validity. Reliability refers the consistency level, the stability level of the results. It means so whatever the results has to be interpreted, has to be concluded, it repeatedly, consistently, the same results coming every year. That's called reliability. That's called, in other words, the consistency and the stability of the results. If any individual do the research in any area relevant to the subject area, and that's called reliability. Let's talk about the types of research, that is pure and applied research, exploratory or formulative research, descriptive research, diagnostic research, which I've already told you, it's a laboratory study. We can see evaluation studies, action research, experimental research, analytical study or statistical method. We can say historical research, surveys, and case study. If we talk about in India, surveys are the most important type of research where a particular or in government organizations or individual are using in the current scenario. And of course, the second one is case study. Case study on any topic, either it would be fund, mutual fund, or it would be any other organization. The case report, a case study has to be conducted by different individuals. So let's begin one by one. Let's study one by one of these types. Let's talk about the pure research. It is one of the, or it is called, in other words, an original research. It is a study of a search of a new knowledge from a subject area. For example, a study examine whether a vegetarian diet is healthier than the one with meat, or a study of the origination of cryptocurrencies. So this is called the original concepts. Cryptocurrency, nobody knows in India before what is the cryptocurrency. So one is originate in India. That's called a new research. That's called a new knowledge that an Indians get to know about the cryptocurrencies, and it has been adopted in India as well. Let's talk about the applied research. It is a study of finding a solution to a problem. In India, there are multiple, or you can say, plenty of social problems or social issues. So, if you find out a particular issue in your region or in your area, and you are trying to find out a solution of that problem, it's called applied research. Let's see, there are a few examples has been mentioned on the screens. A study on how to improve illiteracy in teenagers, or a study trying to decrease fraud on social media platforms. So there is a problem, that is issue is fraud in social media platforms. So now we have to find out the solution or to reduce such frauds electronically or a social media platforms. So that's called applied research. These are the particular purpose, pure, it contribute the new facts, it put various scientific theories to the rest of the study. It also, conceptual clarification has to be granted. It also integrate previously existing theories as well. Whatever the topic has chosen by a researcher, the whatever the existing theories has been adopted, so automatically when it easily integrate the new theories, integrate with the new theories as well, that's called pure research. So anybody who doing a research and just originate, or you can say integrate a new theory. That's called pure research. Let's talk about the applied research. It offers a various or plenty of solutions to many practical problems, and of course it also aims to find out whatever the critical factors involved in that particular practical problems. In India, there are plenty of problems like poverty, unemployment. It's a very wide problems in our country. So we need to find out the critical solutions, a critical research we can say on these particular practical problems, so that in somehow it can reduce in our country. So if you want to do that, you can apply one of the type that's called applied research. Let's talk about the exploratory. In other words, we can say formulative research. Exploratory, I already told that if any researcher is unfamiliar with any unfamiliar problem, he is very less knowledge about it. That's called, and he wants to explore, he wants to show up a new knowledge, a new facts relevant to those problems which is very less awareness, which is very less knowledge about that problem. It's called exploratory research. For example, I've already mentioned here, to determine the best way to treat a new type of cancer. We don't know there are how many types of cancers in India or all over the world. So if I don't know that what new type of cancer has been originated in the world, so I need to get to know. I need to search a new information, and I have to research on this new type of cancer. So that's called exploratory research. So anything or any student, if are unaware of any of the problems or have a very less knowledge about that those problems, so definitely he can adopt exploratory research. He can explore that topic, a new topic which shows or portray a new knowledge to the readers. So to get to know something uniqueness from your research, and that research or that particular type of research is called exploratory research. Purpose, it generate a new ideas. Of course, that's very true, because when we take up a new topic where the existing studies has not been done, so definitely it generate the new ideas. It also increase the researcher familiarity with the problem. It a precise formulation of the problem. It also gather information to clarify the concepts, whether it would be old or want to formalize a new concept as well, to determine whether it is feasible to attempt the study. It is very important that whether if you want to pursue any new problem which is in India, that means you have to see the feasibility of that particular problem in your research study. That means your funds, the financial funds needed, or you can see there if any burden has to be incurred in your research study. So you need to determine whether it would be feasible for you to pursue that study or not. So this is one of the purpose of exploratory research. Next one is descriptive research. As I already told you, descriptive research is always a study of a fact-finding investigation with adequate interpretation. So descriptive study are those type of research where a particular researcher is try to find out the new facts, a new investigation with their accurate investigation. It is one of the simplest type of research. If you are very confused about it, there are a list of research to which research I should opt in your research. So I would suggest, if you're unaware about the different types of research, then you can opt a descriptive research, because it is the one of the simplest type of research and mainly designed to gather a descriptive information to describe a detailed description of a particular topic or a particular theme or a particular subject area which is very relevant to your major and minor specialization, and it provides the information for formulating two or more sophisticated studies as well. And of course, in descriptive studies, data can be collected using all the methods of data collection according to your research topic. So it would be observation, it would be questionnaires, it would be either email or physical questionnaires, structured or unstructured questionnaires, it would be interview. So examples of descriptive research is already mentioned, survey observations as well as the case study. So if you are doing a case study on a geo products, that means you are doing a descriptive research because you are studying a detailed study of all of the products of a geo e-commerce retail brand. Purpose, it can focus directly on a theoretical point. It's very true, there is no quantitative research here. It is a qualitative research where a theories, where a theoretical aspect are more rather than the numerical expect. It also highlights the important methodological aspects of data collection and interpretation. In every research, data collection and interpretation is one of the most important factor. And of course, it is obtained that such research may be useful for prediction when it comes to the social life experiences and when it comes to the social life outside in the boundaries of the research. As I told that we are also facing the social issues. So of course you can describe in detail, and what the exact social issue is, what the exact social problem in your region is, and you have to pursue such research, and accordingly you have to collect data and interpret your results and give a proper or suggestions so that you can reduce such problem socially. Descriptive studies are also valuable in providing the plenty of the facts or new facts whenever needed for social action programs. So if we talk about a new, you can say education policy, a descriptive studies has also been adopted for providing the facts whatever needed in planning the social action programs. Next one is diagnostic study. Diagnostic, I already explained in the earlier slides. Again, I'm explaining to you. It is directed towards discovering what is happening, why it is happening, and what can be done about. If a particular student having a fever, what is happening in his body but after the fever, why it is happening, and what can be done about. So it automatically having a test, whether it would be blood test, whether a urine test, that's called a diagnostic study. That how much infection has been, you can say, increased in a body. It also aims at identifying the causes of the problem and the possible solutions for it. Definitely, if a body has a problem, so definitely it also have a multiple causes or plenty of causes, and of course when the causes are there, the possible solution is also there. In the earliest, in the before 20 or 30 years, TB has no solution, only have a causes. Okay, you have a vomiting, fever, high fever. It's the causes of TB, and of course cold cough as well. So in that particular period there is no solution. So after the research has been conducted, after a few years or after 10 years, a possible solution is also being investigated, and that solution now, its TB is not a major issue in the healthcare sector. So let's have an examples here. Laboratory tests like such as blood and urine test, imaging tests such as it's a mammography or CT scan, and endoscopy such as colonoscopies and the bronchoscopy and the biospy. So these are the diagnostic studies where these particular test has been conducted in anything you happening in your body, so you can easily get to know what was the exact disease or diagnose your disease through these particular tests. Purpose, this study may be also being concerned with discovering and testing whether certain variables are associated. I already explained what is variables. So whatever the variables has been involved here, it is going to be tested whether it's a sugar level, whether it's a hematology, whether it are immunology fact variables. So all the variable is to be tested, all the variables to be discovered properly. So if such testing or discovering of such variables, it's called diagnostic study. It is one of the purpose to determine the frequency with which something occurs, that how much the increases level, how much the decreases level has been increasing in your body, and that to be investigated through such test only. So whether anything is associated with your some disease or not. If a person is having a cancer cells in the body, he's not aware about it and whether his body is having the cancer cells or not, or it is increasing, you can say in a very frequently way, but nobody knows that how much it increases, and how and when it has been increases and how it has been increases. But when we have a when any symptoms has been related to the cancers, then of course definitely a diagnostic test has to be conducted, and accordingly that what type of cancer is to be related to, it can be easily identified. The next one is evaluative, we can say, and the evaluation study. It is one of the type of applied research. So definitely, whenever we talk about the, you can say, assessment, when we talk about the effectiveness, when we talk about the impact level, when we talk about the assess level, when we talk about the, you can say, to fulfillment the various objectives, we talk about the evaluation study. That means we are evaluating something, we are investigating a problem, we are studying or fulfilling the objectives of the study, the various goals of the study which has been designed by a researcher. So we talk about the examples here to determine how well a new website design functions for user, or to assess the customer preference level or satisfaction level or experience level with a new product. And of course, to measure the success of the educational programs. You have a component, but you have to evaluate that component in your own way. That means if such type of study that you are doing, it's called evaluation study. You have an health insurance scheme, you have opted in health insurance scheme, you have taken a health insurance scheme. But before you are taking up an health insurance scheme, you have to study that. You have to evaluate that particular scheme, that whether such scheme is actually applicable or useful or very supportive to all type of individuals according to their ages or based on their ages and diseases. So that type of study, if you do or if you want to pursue for evaluation or something investigative study, we call about evaluation studies. It is directed to assess the quality and the quantity of an activity and its performance. If we talk about the education programs, if we talk about the stress performance programs, so definitely it is an activity and its performance is to be evaluated, whether it's quality and quantity. Next one is to specify its attributes and conditions required for its success. Definitely, attributes are the parameters of the population, whether it would be the age group or we can say a socio-demographic variables like age, gender, occupation, income level, family income, all that particular variables. They are parameters of the population, we can say in other words. and the condition and whatever the conditions would be occurring and it's required for its success, this study is really needed to evaluate it, that which parameter the population will be considered, whether it would, but at what conditions required, so that the particular program, a particular activity, or the performance could be successful. Let's talk about the action plan. Action plan is always whatever you have a solution. Any problem, you have a solution, and the solutions you and on the solutions you are doing another research on the solutions on that particular solutions of the given problem, and that research is called action research. If we talk about a particular, let's take an example, a teacher gives her students a questionnaire that asks them to describe how often they study, what kinds of strategies they use when they study. You have a problem, you have a solution, but still you need to get to know that whether such solution practically working in a community, in a society or not. That research is called action research. If you are doing a research on the solutions of a given problem in any other way, either as a team or being as a community or of any practice, so that it will further improve such issues and solve the problems, so that in a particular or within the society, that's called action research. So in other words, we can say it is a reflective progress, or you can it is a reflective progress of a given problem which needs to be solving by individuals, being as a team or a part of a community of practice. That's called action research. Purpose, it is a baseline survey of a pre-action situation. It is a feasibility study of a proposed action plan. If you have any action plan, if you have any solution of a given problem, you need to find out whether it's feasible for to apply such solutions to the people, on the people or not. So that's the main purpose of the action research. So you have a solution of a given problem, but you need to check on, you need to research on the solution, that whether such solution are applicable or beneficial or useful on the people or on the children, on the kids, on the adults or not. And that's called action research, where the survey, where a feasibility, where a planning and launching, where a concurrent evaluation, the weekly or monthly basis, where a modification accordingly the changes in the particular program. Here we are taking up a purpose of basically a programs and education programs and a particular action programs. So if any of the programs, you have a programs, you know the issues, you have a solution, but you need to check that solution is applicable to that programs for to programs, whether it's useful or not, it's feasible or not. So accordingly you will evaluate, modify or changes in that particular program, and that's called action research. In India, action research is always being applicable whenever the surveys has been conducted, so that according to the survey the issues is being get to know, and accordingly the solution has to be you can say prepared, and accordingly that solution is applied to the problem, whether it is useful or not. If it is useful, well and good. If it is not useful, do the research on the solutions. That's called action research. Next one is experimental research. It's very common. It mostly such research is mostly used in science. Yes, such as sociology, psychology, physics, chemistry, biology, and medicine. Here we talk about the experiments, scientific experiments. Here we talk about the tests. Here we talk about the variables. It would be one or more variables, or it would be if any change in the variables could also changes could also change into the other variables as well. So that is if any systematic approach that you need to apply into a research when it comes to the experiments, when it's come to manipulate or change the one or two variables and to seek to check on or to measure that any changes is occurring on other variables or not because of the one variable. And that research, that experiment is called experimental research. For example, if we talk about cancer, a new cure of lung cancer, a new cure of, you can see blood cancer. So definitely experimental research has to be conducted. If we talk about any new medicine is to be launched in India, of course that medicine is also tested into the laboratory tests. So that research is called experimental research. Let's talk about management perspective. Let's talk about the business perspective example. And hamburger store changes its packaging while keeping everything else the same to observe the effect of the new packaging on sale. It's called experiment because if you prepared a new product, if you prepared a new packaging of a product, you need to check on that whether a new packaging effect on sales will be there or not. It is a test. It is an experiment. A store has been conducted to check on whether effect of new packaging on the sales will occur or not. And that research is called experimental research. Experiment is not all about the tests. It's not about related to the biology, psychology, or physics. It's also related to talk about the business perspective. And such example I consider as a business perspective to test. Let's have an experiment on new packaging, on a new product, whether is it you can see appealing to the public or not. Purpose experiments are conducted to be able to predict phenomena, because whether it would be subjective or whether it would be objective. To maintain control over all factors, their main purpose is to get a control over all factors, whether it would be any related to an issues, whether it would be related to income groups, it would be the age groups, it would be the occupational groups, or we can say the occupational stress of the adults, we can say. Nowadays, stress is one of the major concern in our India among the adults. So anybody can research on that why such stress occurring and what type of stress actually exists in adults. Next is a blueprint of the procedure that enables the researcher to test his hypothesis. Now the question arises is what is hypothesis? It is one of the most important factor of research. Without hypothesis, your research is incomplete. Hypotheses are the declarative or tentative statements where a researcher are ready to prove by adopting a various or one of the methods or adopting a research methodology. That's called hypothesis. Hypotheses are the declarative or tentative statements where a researcher are ready to test using the correct or accurate research methodology. That's called hypothesis. Let's take an example of hypothesis. There is a positive relationship between the age and education. This is, I have made a declarative statement. There is a relationship between the age and education. I know there is no relationship. But how could I prove? I could prove using this research that is called the experimental research to prove such hypothesis. So that's called experimental research, where I'm just experimenting a statement to prove whether it's true or not using the statistics, using the statistics tools. Next one is analytical study. Analytical study is a process of adopting a steps, procedures, techniques of analysis which are applied to the quantitative data. It is especially related to the mathematical models and statistical techniques. Like for example, it always portrays that how and why such question has been adopted. Like for example, mathematical models. There are the, you can see, Z and Y heavency models, where the mathematics has been concepts has been framework has been generated and adopted so that a new concepts could arrive. Statistical techniques, we can say the ANOVA, a multiple two-way or three-way or five-way ANOVA's techniques to be applied, where the 50 variables has been used in your research study. So accordingly, and that kind of study is called analytical study, where a new model has to be analyzed, where the existing model has to be integrated with the new model for the analysis purpose. Here, where the 50 variables has been used in the study, but how to analyze that 50 variables, that's we have to use the analytical study, because analytical studies always relate to the numerical or quantitative data. Quantitative data are those data which are measured numerically. Let's take an example here. In such studies always seek to answer how and why question. If someone might conduct an analytical research to identify a study gap, if there is a study gap, then a models, then the statistical technique has to be adopted, has to be applied to identify the study gap. Because where the model, a study models has to, mathematical models to be used in to identify the study gap. And that study is called analytical study, where you have to do a deep analysis of a data. It's not a normal analysis, it's not a moderate analysis, it's a depth analysis of a data, where we are not taking two or three variables, where we are taking 50 variables in our research. Now which study we have to use for the analysis, that study is called analytical study. Purpose, it aims at testing the hypothesis, specifying and interpreting the relationships. It always have, as I already told you, analytical study always deals with hypothesis, always deals with interpreting that relationship. Let's say, as I already told you, that hypothesis statement that there is a relationship between the age and education. How would you prove that there is a relationship? Through this study. Next is concentrate on analyzing data in depth and examine relationship from various angles by bringing the many relevant variables, which I already told you. If you are adopting or using the 50 variables in your study to apply such analytical study, that means you have to manage that data, you have to analyze that data in depth, so that the relationships is to be examined, is to assess from various angles, so that a particular study will act as unique. Historical research, here we talk about the historical data. It deals with the historical data. It's a systematic collection or evaluation of data related to the past happenings, past occurrences, to describe any causes, effects, or trends of those events, so that it may help or explain the present scenario, or of course, the predict the future events. It always talk about the environmental studies where the particular, you can say, the rainfall has to be predict and anticipate in the future. Next one is data is often archival, including newspapers, clippings, photographs, may include interviews. So whatever the old past documentaries related to the universe, related to the matters, related to anything else, and accordingly you are also using that particular data into your present results relevant to the topic. It's what is called, it's called historical research, it's called historical data. So whatever, if you would like to research on the past matters which has been still not being exist, you can study on that. You can use the past interviews, you can use the newspaper clippings, photographs, and study the historical events. That's called historical research. Next one is survey research. As I told, it is one of the most important research which is used in all over the world survey. If India is facing any social issue, a survey is conducted in India, either online or a mail through emails or a Google form. So survey research is one of the most important area of measurement in any applied research. It always used in sociology. It always used in social issues, social problems which has been exist in all over the world, especially unemployment rate, poverty rate. So here we get to know the through the survey, so the people could get the fill the feedback forms to get the exact scenario. What was the results of that survey? So it always give a very extensive one-on-one in-depth interview. You can also conduct an interview having questions of your survey and ask through in the during the interview. You will get whatever the feedback or responses you will get. You can easily collect and use in your own research. That's called survey research. Let's talk about the purpose. It always conducted in natural setting. It's not planned, it's natural. If the social issues, you know the social issues in India and it's existed in India. You know, accordingly you can research. It's naturally or organically set as, you can see, you can easily adopt. It responds directly from the respondents. It covers a very large population. Surveys also involve an extensive study or intensive study. It can be a survey can be small, can be large. So intensive study can be on a small scale. It can be on a large scale, a very extensive. It includes geographical area or a city or a district or a state. That's called survey research. Case studies also being done. Case studies always talk about the or an individual group or a community or an organization or a companies. If I want to study on a you can say a Joy Private Limited company, so I have to study on that company. It's a case study. It's a case study of that a Joy Private Limited company. That means I'm doing a in-depth investigation of the company, so that accordingly I can show up the different parameters of the company, the positive or negative aspects in my research. So case study is a research methodology common in social science. It's very common. When it comes to the social science topics, research topics, case study is always a easier way to to apply in your research. It is based on the in-depth investigation of a single individual or a group as a whole or any event to explore the cause and what are the causes in order to find out the underlying principles. That means the underlying a particular principles, or you can see the solutions. Field research is very simple. It's one of the traditional form of research which is very different from the other types of research where it conducted in a laboratory or an academic setting. Purpose, the main purpose of such research that people are closer to the real world condition and accordingly conduct or design the study in the best possible way to discover a particular information whenever, wherever required. And that's called the field research. So it's a very traditional form of research which is very different from all the methods of research which are conducted in the laboratory or academic sets. Now, I already explained what is variable. Variable, when it comes to in research, in the field of research, is an object or an idea or any other uh, characteristic or anything else which has some value that you are trying to measure. That's called variable. Like as I already told you an example, that is age, blood pressure, height, weight, sea level, time, exam score. That's called variable. Now, there are two main types of the variable which are conducted in our studies, research study. The first one is independent variable, and the second one is dependent variable. As the name called independent variable stands alone. That means the value of independent variable does not change if there any impact on other variables. No change in independent variable. It remains the same. The researcher can easily manipulate, can easily change the independent variable to measure the impacts on other variables. And that's variable is called independent variable. We say in other words IV. Let's talk about dependent variable. Dependent variable is also called a response variable. In other words, we can also call it outcome variable. We can also call the left side variable. So that's called dependent variable. Dependent variable refers a dependency on other variables. It is a variable which is being tested in the experiment. Either it would be two variables, it would be more variables. Even a researcher measures the outcome of the experiment. As I told you, if we talk about the dependent, we always talk about the outcome. So it is always the researcher do. Researcher measures the outcome of the experiment to see how other variables changes in the value of dependent variable. How much the value changes of the other variables, and that researcher try to measure when it comes to the dependent variable. When we talk about independent variable, researcher can easily manipulate. In case of independent variable, researcher can easily manipulate, can easily change the independent variable. Why? Why they change? Why the researcher manipulate? Because he needs to measure the impact on other variables as well, and that's called independent variable. Let's look up to the example. If you want to study, if you want to test the effect of studying or sleeping on a test score, this is a particular statement has been given. You need to identify what is the dependent variable, what is the independent variable. So, what is the outcome? The effect of studying or sleeping on a test score. If we talk about a test score is a dependent variable because test score is the outcome. Is the outcome of studying or sleeping according to the number of hours. That how much number of hours studying, how much the number of sleeping. It decides your test scores. So it means the test scores is dependent on other variables, that is the studying and the sleeping. So studying or sleeping is a independent variables because sleeping and studying is not an outcome. The outcome is your scores. So outcome variable is a dependent variable, and that is test score, and the rest of the variables, that is studying and sleeping, is a independent variables. The more you study, the test score would be good or would be bad. It depends upon the number of hours that you devote. Exactly. So definitely these factors, whether studying or sleeping, always impact, always influence that how much the test score would be on your test. So this is called dependent and independent variables. Let's talk of hypothesis. I already explained hypothesis is a preliminary or tentative or declarative statement where a particular individual investigates using a accurate research methodology, and it always depends by the researcher. So it is a informed or educated guess. It is not a true statement. It is a predictive statement where you need to prove that whatever you have predicted is actually true or false using a research study. So this is called hypothesis. Of course, so whatever the expectation of the researcher regarding the various variables or the certain variables, it indicates through the hypothesis. So it is a most specific way where an answer of a problem is being stated. Okay, now that's it for today, the hypothesis. In the coming lecture or coming session, I'm going to take the further more important topics. Thank you so much and have a good day and namaste. Are you